Hi guys, this is Grace at Tye-Dyed Iguana. Not a lot of you see me very often because I'm kind of usually in the back doing rat stuff and deliveries, but I'm a big fan of Bioactive, so today I'm going to walk you through on how to set up a tropical bioactive for things like a crested gecko, a gargoyle. This one's actually going to be home to a subadult gargoyle that I have that is ready for an upgrade. So today we're just going to walk through the products that I have here to set up this bioactive with you guys so you have an idea of what goes into it if you want to make one. So starting over here, I have over here, this is our Hydroton, and it's also known as Leica, and this is going to be our base layer. And then I of course have our screen mesh, which is a very important aspect of this. And then in here we have our charcoal, and this is an activated charcoal, just helps to keep things going the way it's supposed to. And then you'll see I'm going to mix up my own custom substrate mix for this enclosure using Repti soil, some of this rainforest substrate, and some crushed magnolia leaves, and some sphagnum moss. This is my own mixture, everyone does it different. And then we have our hardscape pieces here. I have some cork on this side. And then on this side, I have a few main branches because I don't want to have it too overcrowded with hardscape. All of this might not even get used, who knows. So, and then our plants. We have this lemon lime philodendron, which is a favorite of mine. And then a neon pothos, some creeping fig, purple waffle. This is a type of wandering Jew plant, which there's a lot of different varieties. So this one's just one I really fancy. And some purple heart here. And then some bromeliads in here. And then in here we have our cleanup crew. These are gonna be our isopods. I have orange Dalmatians in here, and they're all kind of buried and hiding at this point. So I'm going to get started here. This is our base layer. This is our Hydroton. So what this does is it allows water to get to the bottom, and these different pebbles will actually hold humidity in them and hold a certain content of water, which just helps keep things humid and help keep it a living ecosystem without letting your soil and things go sour. So what is not pictured here is ahead of time I soaked this in water and then I drained the water out. The reason I did that is it helps keep dust and dirt from hitting it. But as you can see here, that's all grime left, and we don't want that in our bottom layer. So if you soak it, it just helps keep that from happening. Next, we're going to put in our screen. So what the screen does is keep dirt and everything else from falling into that, and it keeps it nice and clean. So that's just pretty simple. Literally just pop it in there. You want kind of to turn up at the edges here. Reason being is if it doesn't turn up at the edges, then it's going to let dirt fall through, which defeats the whole purpose of it. So I just nestled that in there. And what I'm gonna do next, and really this is the reason I'm wearing gloves, is I'm gonna put the charcoal in. I'm wearing gloves just because I don't want black hands. So what I do with the charcoal is I usually start at the edges. That way I know that I'm not accidentally flipping the screen up. And why the charcoal is important to a bioactive is what happens is when you water it, the water goes through the soil and then through the charcoal, through the screen and into the bottom. But when your enclosure just sucks that water back up, it pulls it back through the charcoal and purifies it. So it keeps it from going stagnant and just overall makes for a much healthier ecosystem. Now, with this charcoal, it's very important you use activated charcoal. You don't want to just go grab charcoal from like the grocery store. You want horticultural grade activated charcoal. Reason being, the stuff at the grocery store just won't do this, and frankly isn't gonna do anything other than ruin your bioactive. So make sure you grab the right kind. I really like this Birdie Loam charcoal. It's what I usually use myself. There are other places where you can get bigger quantities, but I don't usually bother because a lot of times you got to bust them off yourself, and then you're breathing in all that as well. And same with the Hydroton. I soaked this beforehand. You can kind of see all that nitty gritty grossness on the bottom, and you really don't want to breathe in the charcoal because it is very dusty. So I'm gonna take these off because I hate gloves. So I'm back. Our next step is going to be making the substrate. You can use just Repti soil. Some people use Jungle Mix. I prefer the Repti soil because it has more nutrients for your plants that you're gonna put in. And if you're gonna go through the trouble of making a bioactive, you definitely wanna give your plants the best start you can give them as well. So I use the Repti soil, but you can also use other things, and you can also make your own mix as well. So this is gonna be my base to this enclosure. So a lot of times I will just put in a chunk like this on the bottom, and then I'll make more of a custom mix to layer on top of this. So I'm gonna do that now. So I went ahead and I put in that first chunk, and right now our soil level's about here. I want to bring it up till the edge of this ventilation here. Reason being, one, it looks better, but also two, you want a deeper substrate for all that plant matter that you're putting in there, because those plants have to have somewhere for their roots to go. So we're gonna start our custom mix now. Everyone does things a little bit different. This is the way I do it. And I also have a habit of switching it up all the time too, because if you switch it up, you kind of get an idea of what works best. If you never change what you're doing, you don't know if what really works best, because you just stay with the same old. Like how you discover like your favorite pizza. You don't eat the same pizza. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna add is gonna be some sphagnum moss. Reason being, the sphagnum, one, helps keep the soil broke up, but also two, it helps hold and maintain moisture. So, also as something like sphagnum moss and leaves and things break up and decay, it actually provides food for things like your isopods and springtails that you're gonna add into your enclosure. So you want them to have plenty of things to pick from when they eat. So I generally like to mix in my sphagnum moss when it's a little damp, but I forgot to do that, which is absolutely fine, because the thing we do at the end is spray down the enclosure really well and help set in all the new plants. So it doesn't matter too horribly much that I forgot to do that today. Okay, so next I'm gonna put in some of this rainforest substrate. Now this is a new one for me. Usually I just use Repti bark, which is something I've used in the past pretty steadily. I've decided to give this rainforest substrate a try. Reason being, it's like little pieces of bark, and it'll decay a little bit faster than the chunks of Repti bark, but it'll have a similar effect as far as providing food for your isopods and your springtails. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the enclosure. I did say we're gonna put in some crushed magnolia leaves. We're gonna do that after this is in the enclosure. Reason being, I do want the magnolia leaves to stay a little bit more at the top of the substrate, because that's where we want our isopods to spend their time. So we're gonna dump this. You'll see this has a very textured look to it, and that's what I want. One, it looks cooler, in my opinion, looks more like a natural forest floor, which I love that aesthetic. But two, it breaks up the soil more, so it's going to keep it from getting as compacted, which is better for the plants and for your cleanup crew. So that looks about perfect, and it comes right to that line where we want it to. Next, that's the magnolia leaves. You can use other types of leaves. I like the magnolia leaves because I feel like they last a little bit longer. This is going to be a very crunchy sound. There's no real way to do it. You just want to crumble them. So that's what we're going to do. If you have kiddos, this could be something fun for them to do. But yeah, we sell these magnolia leaves in the shop, of course. And they come baked and ready to go into your reptile tank. And you don't got to do anything other than crunch them. So now that I've got that crunched up, and a little bit of satisfaction, not gonna lie, I'm gonna dump it in here. So I really like to keep this stuff more towards this top layer. Put a little bit of soil on it. What the soil will do is it'll start that breaking down process where it will decay the leaves, which is what those dudes like to chew on. I did save a few bigger ones, and I'll show you why later. So now is the fun part, and in my opinion, the most time-consuming part, and that's laying out your landscape. I lay out the hard pieces, like the wood and the cork bark, before I put in the plants. Reason being, if you put in the plants and try to build around it, it just doesn't usually work as great or look as natural, in my opinion. Because in nature, plants go around the trees, not the trees around the plants. Trees kind of do what they want. So I kind of like this piece here of piece of cork. I actually cut this piece. It was once part of a round, but I cut it because it has this cool little hiding hole. But I still want to be able to see my geckos. So if I pop that in the corner, it gives them a hiding spot, but also a spot where if I really need to check on them, I can check on them without taking the whole tank apart. Okay, so what I did with this philodendron, I'm still not 100% sure on what I'm doing with the hardscape, but I do know for fact where I want this plant to go. So I went ahead and took it out of its pot and gently kicked off all the excess dirt. And then I'm going to pop it in its new home. So I like this piece up in this back corner like this. And this philodendron going in front of that's going to be really great because these guys throw out what's called air roots like that. But they can and will eventually like cling on to things like cork bark, which is a very good thing. And will just in general keep the plant upright. So I'm deciding that I'm going to put this wood here. One, this piece of wood's going to brace this, so this is less likely to fall from the back if they jump on it. But also two, I can drape these leaves over here and help support this plant, but they can also, that gecko that's going in here can crawl up under those leaves and hide if it wants. Just gives it more places to be, I guess is the way to say it. So one of my favorite things to do with enclosures at home is use cork bark logs to plant plants. However, this pothos is just doing so good in this pot, I don't want to take it out of its pot to try to plant it in that. So something easy to do is if you're lucky enough to find a pot size that works with the cork round, you can just pop them right in. This is going to be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but that's okay because at the end of the day it does what I want. And in fact, let me finagle that some. With the way it does it, it holds this plant in place really well, but it also kind of creates a opening in this log where the gecko could crawl in and hide. So I went ahead and popped that pothos in there, And as you can see, there is a little bit of a cave there, and this pothos just hangs right in front of it, which is great. Now roots will eventually come out the bottom of the pot, which is absolutely fine, not gonna hurt anything. You'll just wanna make sure when you're spraying the enclosure down that you water that specifically, but you could just put a little bit of a cup of water in there and that'll be just fine. I think I like the way this looks back here, so I'm gonna go ahead and take this out of the pot. So the way I do that is just very straightforward. I literally take it out of the pot like this. And as you can see, it's holding its shape with its root ball. You want to come up here from the bottom and just very gently kind of like massage your fingers into there to loosen the dirt, because you don't want to damage the roots too horribly much, because transplanting a plant can be stressful as it is. But you do want to get a lot of that dirt off, because you don't want necessarily to have that perlite in your enclosure, because perlite is not a biodegradable thing. It's not going to break down if your animal would accidentally eat it or anything like that. Whereas, you know, natural like dirt and stuff like that will eventually break down if they would get some substrate in their mouth. It would actually pass through their body properly. Something like perlite won't it. Okay, so this is what I'm left with. Very little soil is left on these, and as you can see, there were more than one plant in that pot, which is fine. Gives me a little bit more options on where I want to plant them. I want to really carry this purple theme around, because it isn't really a theme if you just have like a chunk of purple here and a chunk of purple all in one place. Like, you gotta carry it around for it to really work out. And these different plants are gonna look a little different and grow differently within the terrarium, just based on the different light conditions you're creating by the canopy of this enclosure. Now, the fun part, dropping leaves on the ground, but the fun part is putting these in. I'm going to, some of them I'll crunch, but essentially you just kind of want to get in here, dig it down some, and have these, your isopods will hide under them. And it provides hiding places so that your gecko doesn't eat all your cleanup crew, because your gecko absolutely will munch on your cleanup crew if they see them, which is fine. Isopods are actually a really good source of calcium. As a treat, it would just be really expensive as a diet. Well, that's it for this so far. I'm going to go ahead and go grab my watering can, and I'm going to spray this down really well, and then I'm going to show you just dumping in the isopods. So the next step and the final step for setting up my Bioactive is going to be adding these dudes right here. So they were all kind of sleeping earlier, but you can kind of see them now. So I have, the amount I have in here is enough for 2 cultures. I usually recommend putting 2 cultures in. Reason being, having 2 cultures, you're able to start your tank, but also if some get eaten, it's not the biggest deal. So I went ahead and just combined them into this because I had some from another tank already. However, we do sell them here, and we have different varieties. These guys are orange Dalmatians. So I'm going to pop them in here. One of the things I did when I was spraying was I went ahead and sprayed under a few of these leaves to create an extra moist spot for these guys to hide. And I'm going to give a couple days before I put the gecko in here. That way they know where they want to be in different hiding places and all of that. And they're less likely to get picked off. So I am just going to sprinkle them in different places. And there's about 20 total in here. So this is also a time you could add your springtails if you wanted. I already have some springtails at home, so I will add them later at home. because I forgot to bring them with me today for this. So, and then I'm just spraying down those dry patches of soil that just got dumped in. And then that is how you set up a bioactive.